So I would like to hear from you, and maybe it's just typing in the chat just for the sake of time here. What impact does high levels of trust have on organizational culture and performance? So if we were able to help build higher levels of trust within our organizations, within our team members, within our managers, what would be the impact that we might be able to see on the culture, on the performance of our teams? Just even a couple of bullet points or even a few notes. If you want to type those in the chat, I'd love to hear from you before we kind of kick things off here. So Lisa says you cannot have a great culture without high trust. And he says outcomes would be greater. So we'd be able to accomplish that much more because we trust each other. I can see if Marcella or Farana has anything to say. It mentions people can be authentic. What's the impact when you feel like you can actually be your authentic self versus having to put on a bit of a mask or not be able to kind of show your true colors within the workplace? Marcella here says fosters open communication. Yeah. So I'd like us, as we're going through today's presentation, to be able to think about these things and look at, well, how can we apply some of these strategies and tools to be able to, help our team members be more authentic, help foster more open communication, help develop a greater culture that is built on trust and communication. And so let's take a look at a few pieces of the importance of trust in the workplace. So defining trust in the workplace, trust really involves a fundamental belief in the reliability, integrity, and competence of others. It really helps form the bedrock upon which successful working relationships are built on. Now, there's a report by PwC that said it was their global CEO survey, and about 55% of the CEOs think that a lack of trust threatens their organizational growth. But what happens is that most of them do little to actually increase trust because they need help figuring out where to start. And this is where I believe that this is where HR can really shine in terms of helping their leaders better understand how we can create a trusting environment. And so you're thinking of the profound impact on organizational culture and performance. Trust really is that catalyst to being able to create a positive workplace. So when trust is high, individuals are more likely to share ideas, take risks, be authentic, even contribute to a culture of continuous improvement. So a lot of these positive effects from trust really extend further, right? They extend to your employee engagement. They help result in higher productivity, help increase retention rates, recognizing how much or how costly it is to replace employees. So in essence, trust is not just a feel-good concept. It's really a strategic asset that can directly impact the success and sustainability of your organization. I'll look at a few of the benefits of trust that kind of come up top of mind. As some research says, 74% less stress, a 50% increase in productivity, 13% fewer sick days. People are more present in their workplace, and quite a significant reduce in burnout amongst employees. And so there's many reasons why we should develop a more trust-rich environment. The problem is it's not easy, right? Trust takes time. People have different levels of trust. And so helping kind of cultivate that community and that culture within an organization takes time and effort. And so we're going to take a look a little bit now next here at how we can master psychological safety in the workplace and really look at what does it mean to you and within your own culture and environment. And so I'm sure we've heard this before. Psychological safety is a key component of trust, and it's a common thread amongst most successful teams. But what is it about psychological safety, and how can we cultivate it within our workplace? Lily says, and commitment. That is correct, of course. Trust helps build up that level of commitment to our organization and to our teams and even to ourselves. And so when we're looking at psychological safety, it's really defined by how group members believe they are viewed by others in the group. So how employees feel like they're being viewed by other employees, managers, or leaders. While trust regards or looks a little bit more at how one person views another. And so when we're building trust, or trust builds that foundation of psychological safety. When individuals trust their colleagues and leaders, they're much more likely to feel psychologically safe to express themselves openly. Now, we all know the opposite of that, right? When there's low levels of trust and we have maybe fear instead of trust, it's very unlikely for people to open up, even offer their opinion, for fear of retribution or whatever might come from that. And so there are two things in ways to look at when we're looking at building that trust workplace environment that creates psychological safety. First is ensuring a safe place to be able to share ideas, speak up, and ask questions without the fear of being punished or embarrassed. So really, the essence of it is giving your team a voice. The second is show that you trust your team. This is critical, especially when you're working in a remote or hybrid environment. Trusting that work is getting done. Communicating trust with your team and aligning your actions with your words. I'm kind of curious, and type yes in the chat if you've ever experienced this before, where you've had somebody tell you trust them, or you've had a manager tell you that you're being trusted and there's a trust environment here, and yet the words don't line up with their actions. They're breathing down your neck. They're always following up to see where you're at. That doesn't reflect trust within the workplace. At least give me a thumbs up. So I see, there you go. So the whole idea here is that, like, we've all been in that situation. We have to make sure that the words that we're saying actually align with our actions. And so if you want to show a trust to a team member, do it. Give them the space to succeed or fail, and be there to provide the support when they need it. And so I'm curious, and I'd like to hear from you in the chat here. What are some of the ways that you might be able to create psychological safety in your workplace? We'll take a look at a few strategies after this, but I kind of want to get your input before jumping in. What are some ways that maybe you, in the past, you've already helped kind of create psychological safety, or how might you be able to do it moving forward? So Ilya, you're saying power sharing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And feel free to come off mute if you'd like as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. When I'm thinking power sharing, I'm thinking about, I'll give an example, like decision making. I've worked with people where they process information differently. They will go a different way to get to the end line, and just making space for people to find their own pathway and supporting them if they don't achieve the objectives.
And I'm almost hearing two things there. Like, one is adapting to others, recognizing they may not work exactly the same way you do, or maybe even communicate the same way you do. And then the second piece there is providing them the space to be able to do things the way that they see fit, as long as the expectations and the goals that you set have been agreed upon. And so at least you know where you both want to get to, and not controlling so much the how you get there. Does that resonate?
It does. And the other thing that I would throw into the mix is that when you have an environment where you feel psychologically safe, it seems that you understand that sometimes mistakes will be made, and you don't experience punitive things once it occurs. And I think that's a huge component of it.
Yeah. And kind of digging a little bit deeper into that, if you don't mind me asking, how do you showcase that? Or how do you ensure others know that that is an experience that they can have?
I think it's something that I do in the orientation process.
Okay.
One of the things that I love to say is, I don't care how many mistakes that you make, just don't make the same one. Because I think we grow and develop and become stronger leaders, stronger at whatever we're doing, once you've made those mistakes or learn from mistakes that others have made. So I think giving people the ability to make mistakes and be willing to sometimes take the responsibility for the mistakes that they have made when needed.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. I'll open up the floor, or even the chat here. Does anyone else have anything else to add when looking at kind of creating that psychological safety in the workplace? What kind of comes up for you? Lisa says, allow people to work on clearly defined objectives and then give them positive and negative feedback without harsh reactions. So, supporting team members in all ways. So supporting them, when they're down, and also acknowledging them when they did something correct. So you're reinforcing those positive behaviors. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Anyone else, feel free to type in the chat here. I'll just jump on to the next slide where we're going to look a little bit around strategies for creating a more supportive atmosphere. And to be honest, I feel like we've kind of touched on some of these already. The first one that we have here is looking at encouraging open dialogue. And so one of the ways we can look at doing this is really initiating regular team check-ins where everyone has the opportunity to share updates, challenges, even suggestions. And so, this could look from the HR seat, could look at setting up processes or systems around how to do this. It's also looking at helping support managers in how do you have team check-ins? How do they facilitate sharing of updates? What happens when I have an employee that never really speaks up? How can I help elicit more information or kind of feedback from that person as well? So empowering your managers with those kind of soft skills and how they manage and lead their people can be really helpful in these situations. And then also looking at encouraging that active listening. So, this can either be through training on effective communication skills, things along those lines, but really helping your managers understand what does active listening look like and how can you showcase it amongst your team members, and the power that has when your team feels heard, how it improves their engagement, improves their performance, and contributes to the team as a whole. The second strategy that kind of comes up here is around empowering employees' voice. And so when looking at this, it's looking at, you can offer or establish anonymous suggestion boxes or even online forums where employees can submit ideas, concerns, things that are kind of coming up for them in terms of the workplace, culture, everything along those lines. And then also looking at hosting even regular town hall meetings where leadership actively seeks and addresses employees' input. It can be a great way of letting employees know that, hey, we heard you. You mentioned something and we heard you. Now, it doesn't mean that we'll always action it. And I think that's the discrepancy and some of the fear that can come up within leadership is that, well, if I hear and understand what they want, I'm going to now need to do something about it. But even if there's an opportunity to be able to share what you will be able to do, what you have capacity to be able to do, and what you don't have capacity to be able to do, that can have a really big impact. Just on the fact that an employee felt heard and felt like, oh, well, at least I offered my idea, they heard me, they listened, and provided some input as to why or why not we're moving forward on this. And then the last piece or third one here we have around aligning words with actions. I mean, it's so detrimental when we hear one thing, but then we see something else occurring, right? It's like, how often do the words on the wall kind of match the actions within the organization? And so some of the ways of creating more supportive atmosphere around this is providing, could be training that emphasizes the importance of aligning actions with stated values. I think another piece that comes up is really just showing up by example, right? If you say you're going to do something, go and actually do it. And by being able to develop that on a regular basis, it helps kind of build that trust and that supportive atmosphere, recognizing that when something is said, it's actually being actioned. The other piece we have here is recognizing and rewarding trust-building behaviors to help reinforce the importance within the organization. So acknowledging those that are actually building trust or are developing that psychological safety within the environment, within the organization, and maybe showcasing how they're doing it to others so that other departments and across the organization can recognize how they can do it as well. Before we move on to the next section, I just want to pause here for a moment, kind of see, was there anything else that you might add to this list that we haven't mentioned already? Otherwise, we're going to jump into looking at supporting new managers. And so when we think about the impact of trust and the value of psychological safety and how that has such an impact, especially for new managers stepping into their roles and shifting from that individual contributor into a management role, there's a lot of challenges that can come up, right? And you've likely seen this in your own HR experience. Looking at things like the initial hurdle of the task of even earning trust on an already established team. Existing team members may be accustomed to a certain previous leadership style, so it may be crucial for new managers to build credibility and trust from the ground up. There's also that transition from peer to manager, right? Where you've been working maybe with a peer and with these team members for some time, and now you actually have to manage them. How do you maintain that trust, but now also build that new relationship with your peers or your past peers from there? The other thing that comes up is, building trust with new hires. So another challenge that can come up is a new manager is responsible for integrating a new team member. This not only involves fostering trust between the new manager and the team, but also facilitating trust amongst team members themselves. And so it becomes a little bit more layered when we think about this further. And then the third piece here is navigating leadership expectations, right? So new managers often find themselves in a delicate position of balancing leadership expectations while simultaneously working to establish their own credibility and leadership style. So it's really this juggling act, especially as a new manager stepping into that position. So we're going to take a look at 3 ways in which we might be able to kind of overcome some of these challenges, especially for new managers. One of the ways that we're looking at is, and actually maybe before I jump into empowering new managers for trust building success, I'm curious, and feel free, maybe just type in yes in the chat. How many of you here have an established management program or invest regularly in management training for first-time managers? So Lisa says yes. And part of the reason I ask this is because, oftentimes, and I'll jump ahead here, is, around 50% of managers never receive the training they need to succeed in their role. And so when we look at effective ways of supporting managers, it really can come down to even just a leadership training program. How often do individual contributors who are really good in their role step into a management position and don't know how to manage people? Just because you're good at the job doesn't mean you're good at managing other people doing that same job. And so to be able to help set them up for success, having some kind of leadership program, having some kind of training or even coaching that helps them transition into that role and better understand how do you manage others and how do you not jump in and do the work for them, recognizing that you're probably better at it than they are, but now you're a manager and now you have to help them become better at that same job rather than jumping in and doing it for them. So equipping managers with the skills to navigate communication challenges and establish that trust really helps set a foundation for their success and the success of the team. The other piece that comes up here is around mentorship and coaching. So this could look like something even internal to your organization by being able to pair new managers with more experienced managers as a way of, providing them with a trusted confidant who can share insights, offer guidance, even help navigate complexities of leadership. A step further than this could actually be hiring or engaging with a coach to help new managers or first-time managers who are stepping into that position. I think it was Gartner research, if I'm not mistaken, said about 45% of managers lack confidence in their role. So establishing some kind of mentorship program for new managers can really help facilitate greater connections and build up the confidence levels that managers need to be able to succeed for their team and their role. The third piece here is looking at feedback mechanisms. So, creating a continuous learning loop for managers by understanding how their reactions or how their actions and decisions are perceived by their team. And so understanding that about 38% of managers fail or new managers fail within the first 18 months, HR can really implement regular feedback systems that allow new managers to reap insights on their leadership impact. This can include anywhere from a 360-degree feedback assessment, even to anonymous surveys and structured feedback sessions. Now, providing both qualitative and quantitative information can really help equip new managers to better understand, hey, what am I doing well? And what are maybe some areas for improvement? One caveat that I'll mention here is that, if you're noticing a manager, and I actually experienced this recently, that maybe is getting some negative feedback, as to not just leaving them with that negative feedback, but rather providing them support systems on, well, how can you manage this feedback that you're getting? How can you elevate based on this feedback, and providing them the confidence and support to say, hey, I know this is where you're at today, but we're here to help you. We're here to help you get to the next step. We're here to help you manage the feedback that you've been getting so you can manage a team much more effectively. Versus leaving them alone with negative feedback, not really knowing what to do, feeling deflated from receiving this feedback can be really challenging. And so when looking to empower new managers with these methods, not only addresses their challenge, but also positions them for success and trust building within their teams. When we're looking at continued support for ongoing success, trust building is not a one-time event, unfortunately. If it was, it'd make life a lot easier, right? But when we're looking at trust, it takes continuous attention and support. So by implementing regular check-ins, for example, regular check-ins and development plans, as well as encouraging community building, can really help, play a pivotal role in ensuring ongoing success for new managers in their trust building endeavors. And hi, Bart, thanks for joining us here today. We're just talking a little bit about new managers and how they're showing up and how we can better support them. Otherwise, so talking a little bit about regular check-ins and development plans. So why does this matter? So new managers, like any professionals, benefit from regular check-ins to assess their progress and address any challenges they may be facing. These check-ins can go beyond performance evaluations. It's not something that happens once a year or even once a quarter, but it provides an opportunity to discuss the nuances of trust building and even identify areas for further improvement. So how HR can facilitate this is by establishing a regular check-in session between new managers and their direct supervisors. These sessions can include discussions around team dynamics, individual and team goals, or even any specific challenges related to trust building. Development plans can also be collaborative in terms of creating an outline of actionable steps for improvement and setting expectations as to this is what I'm expecting you to continue to work on and how we're looking for you to show up within the team and organization, and really being and saying clear guidelines around that. The next piece that comes up is around community building. Community building can be a powerful strategy for new managers. Engaging with the community of peers allows them to share insights, discuss challenges, and learn from each other's experiences. The sense of belonging really fosters a positive environment that contributes to ongoing, trust building. So HR, what you can do around this is, initiate and facilitate forums or even platforms where new managers can connect with their peers. So this can include regular networking events, online discussion groups, or even mentorship circles. I've noticed have been quite beneficial. On the mentorship circle side, one of the things that we've experienced or that we worked with is what we call team coaching. And the idea around it is providing an opportunity and space for managers or leaders to all get together and discuss specific challenges that are coming up within the workplace or within their management and leadership. And what we've noticed is that it really allows to create a space for leaders to recognize that, hey, you know what? I'm not the only one facing this challenge. I'm not alone here. And we actually get to facilitate and talk through, well, how might we be able to approach this better next time? And how can we continue to improve and hold each other accountable in making these improvements? And so it really creates a safe space and discussion for community building and also help elevate our individual skills and then also hold that accountability around, well, this is how we're looking to do moving forward. And let's make sure that we don't kind of fall back on old habits, which we all know is quite easy to do as well. Before stepping into the next section, I wanted to pause here for a moment and just kind of see if there's any questions or anything else that are kind of coming up so far. I really thank you very much for jumping in and joining us. I know Illy mentioned that she believes in this so far, what we've been looking at. That's fantastic. So the next section, we're really going to jump into creating an actionable trust building blueprint. But again, just want to pause here to see how are we doing so far? Are we all on the same page and how we can support our team members to develop more of a psychologically safe environment so far? Marcel says, lovely. All right. So as I mentioned, moving into the home stretch for today, we wanted for you to walk away with an actual trust building blueprint that you can help tailor to your teams and organization. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover 6 key questions on developing, applying, and measuring trust building within your organization. So if you don't have the download just yet, I'll pause sharing here. I'll pop it back in the chat again. And I would encourage you just to download this document here, this PDF. It is a fillable PDF, and so you can you should be able to fill it out directly just by opening it up. And what I'll do is we'll actually walk through this together and answer these 6 questions, and this will give you an opportunity to actually have a key takeaway, something to actually walk away with for your organization and say, hey, these are the things that I'm looking to apply, and provide you something to kind of come back to after today and be able to help kind of move forward within the organization. So let's jump into it here. And what I would like this to be is, as much as possible, we'll try to make this as collaborative, but recognizing you might be taking time to think things through and write things out, I will give it a little bit of space after each question so that you can start to fill out your own action survey, and then we'll come up with some ideas on how we work with this. And so the first question that's coming up is, How can HR professionals collaborate with leadership on key elements to develop a customized trust blueprint for your organization? So how can you collaborate with leadership to be able to develop more trust within the organization? What are some key things you might be able to do? So I'll pause here for a minute. I'll let people kind of think it through, and then feel free to type in the chat if you have any ideas or if you've written them down already. Let's hear from you in the chat. We'd love to get your input before providing some more information. Hi, Oliver. Thanks for joining us again today.
Hi there. Sorry, it looks like I'm way late. Is that right? That this started at 10?
Yeah, yes, it did, but that's okay. We're actually just going through a trust building blueprint at the moment. And so everyone's taking time to answer some questions on their own. I'm curious, if you open the chat, do you have access to the document I just shared with everybody?
Let me come through here. I'm looking at the meeting chat and I see nothing in there.
Okay, it's probably because you just joined. Give me 1 second, and I'll share it again in the chat just so you can have access to it. And so what
Okay.
we're doing is we're just filling out one question at a time, or you joined us at the perfect time. We just started in question number 1 here.
Okay.
And just for the sake of time and everybody else as well, feel free to type in the chat if you had any responses that you wanted to add to this. Some of the things that can come up when we're thinking about, collaborating with our leadership team and setting up some of those key elements can be, consider conducting surveys. Look at doing some kind of focus groups, or even having one-on-ones to gather insights from your team members to better understand, how you can develop, or even just gauge what does our trust level look like today within the organization. The other piece that comes up is looking at engaging leadership in workshops or even strategy sessions to align goals with trust building initiatives. Like we know, everything or lots of things start at the top, right? If there's distrust at the executive level, that distrust likely has a ripple effect within the organization. And so looking at, well, how, if you're looking at developing a more trust-based model within your organization, it's saying, hey, how can we help build trust at the top that then is emulated and is reflected within the entire organization? So if you had anything else to add to this, please feel free. Otherwise, the second question that's coming up around this is, what key elements can be included considering unique aspects of organizational culture and goals? So I'll pause here for a moment and allow you to think and reflect on this before we give some prompts.
Scott, you want us to respond in the chat what our thoughts might be on that?
Yeah, no, that'd be great, Oliver.
Okay.
And in the meantime, if you want to type it in using the document, just so you have something to walk away with as well, feel free to do that too.
Oh, in the document. Okay. And I'll actually put it in the chat to make it easier for them.
So a few things that come up around here can be, looking at outlining clear communication channels and protocols. And so the idea here is really setting expectations as to, well, how do we communicate together? What are the channels being used? Recognize that these days, if you're on Slack and email and you have a project board like Monday or Asana or anything else along those lines, it can be, sometimes confusing as to, well, which channel are we actually using for each aspect? And so having those things really drilled down can actually help build trust, recognizing that we're all very clear as to how we move forward on things. The other piece that kind of comes up is looking at program handbooks that help educate employees on, well, how do you build trust? How is trust reflected within our workplace? I know someone had mentioned, I think it was Lisa earlier, if I'm not mistaken, or Illy, talking a little bit about, it starts at the onboarding process. And so, well, this is what trust looks like within our workplace. This is how we work together and how we collaborate. These are the expectations that we have for you kind of coming on board here. Can be really helpful. And then even establishing some of those mechanisms for recognizing trust building behaviors. So it can be as simple as having a Slack channel that calls people out in terms of the great things that they're doing or how they're building a community or how they're building more trust. Oliver here is saying, outlining strategy and reasoning behind decisions. Yeah, so letting people know what is the why behind some of these decisions, especially at the executive level, can really help build more trust with employees and give them more visibility on what's going on. So the next section here, we're talking a little bit about, well, how can we apply some of the things we're talking about within this blueprint? And so the next question that comes up is, how can HR professionals ensure the trust building blueprint is ready for immediate organization application? And so a few things that come up around this one is, develop a phased implementation plan. So don't look at changing everything all at once. We know how quickly and how hard that is to kind of do all at once. Rather look at, well, what phases of this can we do to help kind of move forward and build more trust within our teams, and really focus on the things that will have the most impact and are most easily executable internally. And even look at supporting employees and managers to familiarize themselves with new trust-based initiatives. So how are you launching this to your team? How will they better understand how we're moving forward with this trust building blueprint from there? Oliver also mentioned here, publishing OKRs for everyone. The next piece we're looking at here is...
That was for the prior question, so.
Thanks for clarifying, Oliver. Yeah, publishing OKRs for everyone, so getting a little more clarity and on more of that, developing that trust building blueprint. Fantastic. So the next piece here is looking at, are there any quick win strategies or initiatives that can be implemented to kickstart that trust building process? So some things to consider are, look at launching a trust focused recognition program. So anything that helps recognize, the types of behaviors you want to see with it more within your organization, and being able to make them visible will help build more, will help allow others to want to emulate and be able to do the same. And then also look at, initiating, we come back to this again, talked about it a little bit earlier, initiating regular town hall meetings or forums for that open dialogue between leadership and employees, recognizing that, having more visibility and that communication channel being open can really help develop and build trust across the organization. Now, when we're looking at measuring and interacting, so what metrics or indicators can be used to measure the success of your trust building initiatives? One of the things you can look at is tracking employee engagement through surveys and feedback mechanisms. So just doing a baseline to be able to understand what is my engagement level now. After you start to implement some of these trust building initiatives, be able to take another engagement or pulse to be able to understand if there's been any improvement or any change based on the work that you've done. Also look at monitoring changes in communication patterns and collaborations with teams. Can be, again, another way of just having your finger on the pulse as to what is the organizational dynamic, what's the culture, how is trust currently being built within our teams. The next thing that comes to mind is, looking at what mechanisms can be implemented for continuous improvement, allowing for, trust building blueprint to evolve over time. So rather than be something, well, hey, we tried to build some trust last year, and this is what we did, and then it gets stale and kind of left on the shelf. How can we ensure that this is part of our culture and part of our organization as we move forward? And so again, coming back to conducting those regular pulse surveys or having those feedback sessions to be able to gather real-time insights can really be helpful. And then building on that, scheduling regular reviews and assessments of trust building initiatives with leadership and key stakeholders. So trying to better understand as to, based on what we've done so far, how is this being impacted across the organization, not just at the employee level, but also for our managers, our leaders, and our executives as a whole. And so I'll pause here just for a moment just to see if there's any questions, or even I'd love to get your input if you have any other things you want to incorporate or that you've incorporated within your own strategy that we haven't talked about so far here. We'd love to get your input.
Scott, it seems like a lot of this seems to be qualitative versus quantitative, and when you're measuring trust, right?
I'm curious, would you have any more, I think, quantitative examples? to be able to kind of share here in your experience?
I think maybe the only quantitative thing that you could do is maybe through the surveys when you have a rating, then you can kind of change it to a quantitative kind of idea that trust is being increased. Otherwise, when you look at monitoring changes in communication patterns, collaboration within teams, that feels to me more like an observational thing, and it's a qualitative observation, not something that you can kind of pinpoint saying, measuring it in a way.
And I think to your point, a lot of times, not a lot of times, but I imagine the mix between those two things. On the flip side, if we're tracking employee engagement level and you're doing a baseline survey and you're tracking that engagement again 6 months later, I mean, that could give you a real number value as to, well, hey, how has our engagement increased at all? What's the difference here? And those can maybe be some more harder measures. Where I think to your point, monitoring the change can be a little more difficult to see, especially in a remote or hybrid workplace. But I think combining both of those things together can give a bit more of a holistic vision as well.
And maybe this is not the right time to ask logistics for implementing these kind of things, but one of the things that kind of just came to mind is that some people are more comfortable in talking in particular groups, but as if we're doing this in a large scale and having like group sessions that include the entire company, a lot of people don't kind of speak up and engage. So is there in best practices kind of this idea of finding out how to bring forward communication,
No, I think you bring up a great point there, Oliver, and coming at the basis of it is being able to adapt to different employees' communication style or needs, recognizing that some might have no problem standing up at a town hall and saying, hey, this is how I feel, this is what's coming up for me, while others might want to talk more one-on-one with another manager, or even building on that, might actually prefer writing it out in an anonymous feedback survey. And so by being able to have all those different channels in place, you're adapting your needs, and you're adapting how people are, their ability to actually kind of provide that feedback and have their voice heard.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next session, or as we're looking to kind of wrap up here, one of the things I wanted to touch on is, there was an HR software provider persona that did this study, around 500 C-suite executives and about 1,000 HR decision makers, just like you. And I'd like to hear from you as to if this resonates. Type yes into the chat. What they ended up finding out was that over 50% of C-suite leaders admit they don't know how to use their HR team as effectively and strategically as they would like. Have we ever been or are you in a similar situation right now? Or have you noticed this maybe in a past role where C-suite may not recognize or see as much of the value in the HR initiatives that you're bringing forward? And that might, cause challenges in terms of, looking at influencing or getting buy-in, looking at even investing in learning and development, or building off that, demonstrating ROI on HR initiatives, or even obtaining appropriate annual budgets to be able to do the work that you're looking to do to impact the people. At the end of the day, your people are an asset to the organization, right? The most important asset. Without them, the company can't survive and can't move forward. And so if this is something that resonates with you, and I know Lisa typed in true in the chat here as well. So, on one hand, thank you for raising your hand, Lisa. On the other hand, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this. Oliver as well, sorry you're experiencing this. One of the things that we're looking, or that we've done, is we put together a small HR assessment. And the idea around this, what this really came from, was Gartner did some research that found that organizations who, that don't have leadership talent or skills to support their team, there's about 77% of organizations that are really facing or experiencing leadership gaps within their leaders' skill set. And so what we've done is we've actually put together a complimentary HR assessment. And so what we've done is it's an online assessment. You go through it, you answer, I think it's between 12 and 15 questions, takes probably 5 minutes to be honest. And then you actually get a 50-minute debrief. And so the benefit of this is it really helps showcase and assess leadership gaps within your organization. And more importantly, actually creates a customized ROI calculator based on your team. So it's not just something that's a check the box and fits for all, but rather we take information based on your organization and your team and provide you with real results, real ROI that you can then use with the goal of helping influence C-suite. And so honestly, like our main goal with this is to help showcase HR department as a revenue driver rather than a cost center. And so if this is something you're interested in, I'll share a link in the chat. And the link just leads you directly to the survey itself online. And so you can take 5 minutes just to fill out the survey yourself, and we'll actually give you that evidence-backed data and cost savings to help influence C-suite. Well, otherwise, I want to thank everybody for taking the time this afternoon to join us. I appreciate your participation. Always happy to have you part of our network and our group. I'll for sure reach out for our next webinar. I think we have another one coming up in a couple of weeks. And feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, YouTube. Oliver, thank you for jumping in today again. Illy, thank you very much as well. Yes, I will send a recording to everybody at the end of this presentation, so you can come back to this. And yeah, really looking forward to having you part of our network and group here.